Well, the warmest of greetings to you, one and all. So very glad to have you with us here today on the Christian Whistleblower channel. And today I'm very, very honored for really some podcast history. I'm being joined today by none other than Laura Eisenhower and Magenta Pixie. And I'm very, very honored and privileged. Let me just give you a few little formal introductions. Laura Eisenhower is a global alchemist, a researcher, and an intuitive astrologist. She's an internationally acclaimed speaker who's presented her work worldwide, great-granddaughter of President Dwight David Eisenhower, and she reveals exopolitical information about his administration that has been long held in secrecy. And Magenta Pixie is a powerful channeler of a group called the Collective Council of the Nine, who are bringing us information about what's going on in the world, what's going on about us, and the very happy and positive future, I think, that we have to look forward to. If it was just me, I would say that we have the First Lady of the exopolitical UFO knowledge arena and the Queen Fairy of the Rainbow Unicorn Coalition right here on one stage. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. It's an absolute honor to be chatting with you both.
And, you know, I believe in giving credit where credit is due. And it was, I guess, over a year or so now that I was watching Magenta Pixie on her channel, and she said that she really felt a burden to try to get people in the quote unquote new age community together with people from the quote unquote truther community. And I reached out to her, and we've done a couple of shows together. And then I started thinking one day, what better than to get Laura Eisenhower, who really is, and I'm not joking, Laura, the First Lady and one of the leading advocates of really another type of genre, and to get all three people together with me, I'm just a flame-throwing truther, to get all of these three people together, bring these communities together. How important do you think it is, ladies, to merge and to build synergy between what can sometimes be competing camps within our overall genre? Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. I'm a lot more familiar and comfortable with actually Magenta's world, honestly, and what moving forward. My website's called Cosmic Gaia. I've been all into, mythology, cosmic mythology, astrology, the esoteric, earth grids, the potential of our DNA, Hyros, Gamos, sacred union, and, just that unification that's so necessary on the planet. And so the exopolitical part for me is to look at what's happened on a galactic level, look at our galactic history, where it is on the world stage currently, and what has been held in secrecy connected to dark and hidden agendas that have impacted not only the earth grids, but of course, have genetically modified us, impacted our DNA and through us. And I don't want to, come from a place of we're a victim, but we drop down into this lower harmonic universe and have been sort of seeking ourselves again and trying to wake up to the truth of who we really are. And there's a lot of interference and there's a lot of benevolent beings. So the realms that Magenta connects into can really connect us in with that. And so I think this is such a great synergy because that's the core of it for me, is to be the antidote and focus on the solution. But we got to also look at this other thing going on that is very ancient in our history, connected to Saturn, what's happened to Saturn, and all the different galactic wars.
Excellent. Magenta.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything Laura just said. And I think, to be honest, the three of us, and probably everyone listening, are the same, really. It's just that we each have different ways of expressing that, depending on how we see things within, how we work with our own, inner connection, the research that we've done. But really, I think it's really good to actually have that from an outer perspective and have that on a show, have different people that are perceived as coming from different camps, because then individuals who are going through this themselves, they've got a part of them that are, the truther and the UFO community and the esoteric community. And then others have got parts of them that are more into the DNA activation and more new agey and the ascended masters. And also you've got individuals who come in from one stream but reject another because it just doesn't feel right to them. And so I think it's really good to show that it doesn't matter how you get there. The point is we're all on the same team. And you mentioned about, this can be very much competitive, but ideally That isn't how it should be. It shouldn't be competitive. We should be embracing all the differences, the unique differences that each one of us has, and the gifts that we each bring to the table. So I try very, very hard not to be competitive at all. And the 9 have taught me this. Whenever I've perhaps found myself thinking, oh, I don't know if I agree with what that person said, or I don't know if I agree with that, the 9 will say, but this person is a starseed or a light worker, and this person is activated here. I'm not saying that this group isn't infiltrated by those who are not really one of us. That is the case, but we'll also meet individuals that we might not resonate with, but they're still trying to do the same thing as us, which is create freedom and liberty for this planet, and for us to be able to go through what we should have gone through many, many thousands of years ago, and that's our personal ascension process.
Yeah, that's so powerful, Magenta. And I came from, the Orthodox Christianity world. I was 20 years a Christian minister. And in that genre, whether you know it or not, there's a lot of competition, and it's very much dog eat dog. And it's, we're the only ones. If you're not with us, then you're not real. And there's just a lot of competition. And I saw that a little bit as I came into, this genre. And it seems like it might be increasing a little, hopefully not. And at the end of the day, I can still find myself in fault. Like you said, Magenta, well, I don't know if I believe all that. I don't know if I agree with everything they say. And if we drill down deeply enough, there's probably some things I don't agree with that Magenta Pixie teaches. There's probably some things I don't agree with that Laura Eisenhower teaches. And surely there's things that you ladies don't agree with me. But one thing we can all agree on is that we're working together for the ascension and the betterment of humanity. And does it really matter at the end of the day if you don't like my magenta shirt and I don't particularly like your black blouse and those beads that Laura has aren't exactly to my taste? Does that really matter? Or can we look past the differences and focus on the synergy? Because the synergy that we can build together when we take those same energies of, I don't know, I don't understand. What if we put that together and said, who cares if I don't like everything they say? What if I find something I do like about what they say? And let's join hands together and fight in the real battle against humanity as a whole.
We must do that, because divided, we are not going to be able to achieve this. We must be united and look past the little differences that we might have. We must find that common ground, and it's all done through the heart. It's like being in a family. You love your mum, you love your dad, you love your brother, you love your sister, you love your husband, you love your wife. You might not agree with everything that they say, but you find a way to coexist. And we need to do that as the greater Starseed community or group of light workers or truthers, truth seekers. Whatever.
And we are family, aren't we, Laura?
Yes, totally. And the thing is, we're in this sort of personality matrix. That's why they call it like 3D, because it's only focused on the lower chakras of personality.
Oh, that's good.
And these sort of things that we learn when we're stuck in front of the television, maybe when we're a kid, seeing these dramas, or just sort of the more petty kind of socially engineered way that people relate. That's very much even a high school mentality that we still see today in the adult world, so-called adult world. And so the personality matrix is pretty much the where the programmings affect us, because it affects our ego and it stimulates the pettiness. When we move into the soul, when we move into the monad, when we move into the universal mind matrix, which is a part of the fullness of all that we are, those things don't matter at all, because true oneness is diversity and harmony. And it's the only way that we can really gauge whether or not we're spiritually mature, if we can look beyond these things. Because having a sense of humor is where it's at. If I don't like something about somebody, I can like kind of chuckle at it and still adore them and love them for it. But if they're, throwing nastiness and they're abusive, I got to walk away and have a boundary and really hope for the best. But we got to evolve and mature to be able to connect in on a soul level, because the unification is everything, just like Magenta said. The conquer and division is targeting our self-worth. And we've been raised to have a very limited sense of self-worth based on outer reward systems that are very superficial and can create a lot of insecurities, and then a need to prove ourselves. And then we get competitive because we're trying to one up everybody. And it's just a world that's so foreign to me, but it seems so much more alive. And it's so wonderful to be in the presence of Magenta and you, because these are the kind of conversations I feel we really need to have. And so much is at stake if we just don't step it up and care about each other on a much deeper level.
That's so true, Laura. And you have the platform where you're able to look at the overall ascension movement or awareness movement as a whole. And from your place, I want to ask you the same question, Magenta, please, if you could be thinking of this while Laura's giving us her take. What do you see, Laura, as the greatest threat to our movement collectively, or even to humanity collectively? And then in addition to that, what do you think is our greatest opportunity?
I think a lot of the biggest danger is gossip, and somebody hearing something about somebody else, running too wild with it, not having the real truth or information, not knowing that person directly, not having any real basis. It's very much like what we see. I don't want to bring up high school again, but it's very much the telephone.
You're right on, though. That's such a great analogy.
Yeah, and I just see I don't know, people needing to choose sides. And I think the greatest thing that we can really embrace is the fact that everything we're here for is soul development. And this is an opportunity for us to look at where we get triggered, where we find ourselves hooking in, where we're allowing our life force to be siphoned from, because these movements are going to be targeted. And so they're going to be plants that go out of their way to make sure that we're divided and conquered, because I see the good in everybody that's on both sides. So I'm not going to choose. I see the sincerity, and I see sort of this subtle game. But even if I think I know who the players are, I'm not going to say it. I don't want to smear that person because I don't fully know. And that wouldn't be fair, because then I'm creating the very thing I want to evolve out of or be free of and not even engage in. So I think one of the greatest things is the information, the resources, the integrity that people carry, and really listening to the people and just seeing what impact does this conflict have on everybody who is relying on this as an example. Like, I think the biggest opportunity is for us to say, we understand this field enough to know how targeted it is. And with that wisdom, we can rise above it together and really look to each other and really get the truth amongst each other and be willing to take these opposing camps or forces and sit down together and devote to having a harmonious and mature discussion. And I think we all have that in us. And I am all about being that kind of mediator, and somebody that at least is holding space for that in this community.
Very well stated. Very well stated. Magenta, challenges and opportunities in our collective movement.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. The challenge is division between us, and the opportunities is unity with us. The 9 say, united you stand. We can't do this on our own. We can go through an individual ascension process, but right now, this planet, the timeline that we are in, this planet is holding the energy for a collective ascension process. So we are going through this together. And Laura's right, this movement is targeted, and we need to make sure that we don't allow that infiltration to pull us away from our focus and pull us from our alignment. And the way to do that is exactly as Laura said. I can sometimes read about situations where leaders of one movement, leaders of another movement are arguing amongst themselves. And, you know, it would be very easy to comment. It would be very easy to sort of say, oh, I don't resonate with this person, or I do with that person. But then you're being bought into that polarity game, and it's easy to do. I've seen it on Twitter. It's so easy when somebody triggers you with something that you believe in strongly. It's very easy to jump into that other polarity and get into a debate. But that is, as Laura said, the lower 3 chakras. That is the linear reality, and that is where the targeting is. There is no targeting in those higher chakras. That's where one finds freedom and liberty and love and connection. So it is important to have these conversations, either publicly like we are, or privately amongst your groups. Get together, have groups, have discussions. And the 9 told me very early on to be not necessarily wary, that's not really the right word, but just to be aware. When you listen to a spiritual teacher or a truther or somebody delivering this information, when they're running down other people in the movement publicly, because that goes on. And if that person is doing that, they're not in unity consciousness. They are in separation, and they are in competition, because they're saying that person's no good, that person's no good, listen to me. And that is one of the pitfalls of our process. This has to be acceptance. This has to be open-hearted and unification.
Absolutely. And Magenta, you've mentioned the 9 a couple times. Can you just give the audience that may not know who the 9 are, just a quick thumbnail sketch of who this 9 are that you speak of?
I guess the best way to explain it is when we expand our brain waves, when we activate the DNA, when we go into those higher chakras, as we were talking about, we each have a unique way of connecting to that inner knowing or those inner memories, activating them. And one of the ways that this is done is through the right hemisphere of the brain. And the right hemisphere of the brain works with picture and symbol. And so that's how it worked for me. When I first made a connection with my inner memory, my inner knowing, that presented to me as a being outside of me, and eventually several beings outside of me. That was how the DNA memory taught me. If you remember that film Superman, where Superman throws that crystal into the snow, and then he builds this big crystal castle, and then he's able to speak to his mother and his father in real time, but they're no longer there because the planet Krypton has already died, and so they're no longer there, but he's able to access the memories of them through the crystal castle in the snow. He's able to ask any question. That's kind of how it is for us. It's the same thing. And so for me, I'm just activating that crystalline memory system, that memory matrix, but it's presenting to me like beings. Of course they are, because that higher consciousness is individualized, so they are beings. So the 9 present to me as 9 angelic looking presentations, but I can go beyond that presentation, beyond that form, which is a 5th dimensional presentation. If it's form, if it's angel, if it's human, beyond the 5th dimension, we're looking at geometry and vortexes and matrices and mathematics, and so they lose the form, and I can communicate with that aspect of them as well. But that took me many years to get to that place. So that's who the 9 are, really. And it's very easy to say, oh, they're angels, they're beings from another planet that I speak to, they're extraterrestrials. All of that is true, but that can lose some people, you know, who aren't necessarily into the channeling thing, because at the end of the day, what is channeling? It's you connecting to the memory system within you, that cellular matrix, and bringing up the memories. And channeling is just an explanation. It doesn't mean that you are doing something that other people are not doing. Every starseed is doing this in one way or another.
That's absolutely fascinating, Magenta, and it's so true. We're, of course, speaking with Magenta Pixie and Laura Eisenhower, and we've only been here about 18 minutes, and you ladies have taught me something and have sparked something within me, because I was at Contact in the Desert where Laura was a few weeks ago, and huge event, Magenta. I mean, it was packed. It was literally humanity wall to wall. It was the turnout was amazing, and it comes down to such individual responsibility, because I was there with some people, and they chose to look at negative aspects, and I kind of allowed myself to get pulled into that. Oh, this is too commercialized, and this is just for money. And while there is an aspect of commercialization to a big event like that, you got to pay the bills, you got to keep things going. Why would we look at something that minute when here's thousands and thousands of people in 2019 that could be at the beach, could be playing golf, could be at some sports event, could be at some movie, could be, protesting somewhere politically, but they've chosen to be there at a gathering of people that the purpose of which is to learn, to grow, to develop. And I allowed myself to get pulled in for a while into that, oh, well, this is wrong and that is wrong. But there's so much that's right. And the one thing that you ladies have showed me here today is if we can focus on the things that are right, then the things that are wrong don't really matter as much anymore. And don't let things that are really minute pollute us and keep us away from wanting to be together, wanting to learn together, grow together, and appreciating what really is when you think about it, a tremendously majestic movement that we're a part of.
Yeah. I mean, unity is like the immune system. I mean, our capacity to see the beauty in all things, but also learn from the darker aspects, but not dwell in it, but recognize it, not deny it, is very much the alchemy. And
give me some pointers, Laura. Next time I'm in a place and maybe I'm hearing some negativity, and maybe you can see it, but for people that are entrenched into belief systems, I believe this, so I don't believe that. I was growing up taught this way, so I can't believe that. Give us some pointers for people that are entrenched into belief systems to maybe broaden their horizons a little bit.
Well, I think they have to have their own experience. And so I always like to say, take what resonates, leave the rest. I mean, it's really, it's very much like what Magenta was saying. There's aspects of ourselves that we can reach. Many of us have access to it. Some people are very threatened by something about themselves that they don't fully understand, because in a sense, we were born into captivity. So our natural habitat is a little scary once the gateways are open. It's kind of like, some of us are way more comfortable there. And so, when we look at the diversity of astrological charts, for example, there might be one person very polarized into maybe a very limited or practical approach to life. And practical is good. But, if they have an open enough mind, they're going to get the activations and be able to switch on dormant aspects of self. So sometimes it's not so much about the belief system. It's about a process that can be activated and initiated for that person to experience for themselves. Because ultimately they're going to have to go through the underworlds and the initiations and, get the download that might feel like they're going crazy, or like makes them very ungrounded and uprooted and uncomfortable with what they're needing to get rid of. So I think people just need to have their own experience and not worry about having to believe in a speaker and everything they say. Just allow them. What I would encourage with them, to answer your question, is encouraging them to have an experience and just to take it in and have the boundaries where necessary, and then go home and just let it all circulate and see what becomes of it. Because when we feel like we have to agree with something, then it's very much the duality of I like her, I don't like her. But I want people to just have an experience, and I don't want them to take in anything that doesn't resonate. But my intention that I hold is that they'll connect with places within them that can help that circulation of energy to really allow purification and healing and alchemy, because the ether is available in ways that it hasn't been, because of where we are in this ascension window.
Absolutely. So maybe instead of feeling like you have to make a decision, so to speak, on the spot, and you have to pick what's good and what's bad, quote unquote, on the spot, maybe take it all in. If it doesn't resonate with you, let it go, but go home and let it marinate a little bit. Let it kind of settle and figure out what is for you, and let's face it, what is for you at that time. Because I mean, I've been in places where I said, oh, that's not for me, but it wasn't for me at that time, and 6 months down the road it was for me. And Magenta, you talk about something in your books, and I don't think I'm quoting it wrong. You call it, is it mental plasticity or mental elasticity, where you talk about holding different points of view in your mind at the same time?
Bilocational consciousness.
That's it.
Yeah. So that's holding two perspectives at the same time that from a linear point of view would be seen as opposing. So you rise up and you look at these different opposing viewpoints, and you genuinely embrace both perspectives. You start off by trying to do this in your integration, but eventually you genuinely embrace two perspectives. For example, is the God force energy within you, or is the God force energy outside of you? That's been a big debate philosophically for thousands of years. And the answer, of course, is both. So that's just a very simple one. But going back to what Laura said, such a wonderful way of explaining everything. I'm so blown away by what Laura says. She's amazing. I would just like to say that I just agree with everything she said on that, and I think it's good to have perspectives. So say if something is a big event and there's something negative going on behind the scenes, it's good to hear that perspective. We don't want to ignore it. We don't want to bury our head in the sand, but also, as Laura said, to take on the good aspects of that, the positive aspects of that, and go through an integration within, okay, so I'm taking on board that this is negative. And if that is really, really negative for you and it's affecting your belief system, then you can choose to boycott that particular event. But if you think, well, okay, I'm going to take on board that that's really negative, but on this side, this is really positive and really helpful. As Laura said, take what resonates and leave the rest. So I agree with everything she said there. And this is going to happen because these big events are again going to be something that's potentially open for targeting. You can have 500.
Oh, great point.
Yeah, you can have 500 people speaking at an event. It only takes one person from the deep state cabal to sneak in, and they can start up a problem. And it doesn't even have to be like that. It can just simply be the lower energy that's coming in. So we must be mindful always of the goal, which is planetary ascension, individual ascension, freedom for this planet, so that when we have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, we are not bringing them into a reality that's just the same old thing that's been there for thousands of years. Let's create a new reality for our beloved descendants. That's the goal here. And the way to do that is unity. And if someone is listening right now and they can't stand me or can't stand you or can't stand Laura, that's okay. You don't have to like us. Let's simply hold hands and be part of a team, because we have to be united.
What a great perspective, Magenta. And really, if you look at it objectively as what it is, if you have a great big event, like we talked about Contact in the Desert, if everything went perfectly, that should make us suspicious, because we know it should be targeted and there's going to be some efforts to derail it. So you really, that's a great change of perspective. I love that. And just to turn corners a little bit, Laura Eisenhower, how much off-world help and interference do you think we're getting right now collectively here on planet Earth?
I think there's always, been both. I mean, we hold in our dormant DNA, or so-called junk DNA, higher harmonic universes, higher Earth energies that are connected to, the galactic stories that we've already, or many of us have already lived out. In these upper quadrants of our dimensional bodies, these wars took place, and the wars were basically, I mean, we could just simplify it to service to self, service to others, like the law of one states. Just sort of the Christ consciousness, antichrist. I mean, people have their different way of defining it, but it's really, because it's a free will universe, there's a negative ego construct that comes out of it to play with power. What happens if I do this? What happens if I try and instigate this, or hybridize, or try and push an agenda, and have the ability to tinker with DNA, or manipulate coming from, a high, place. So these are all aspects of ourself, because we hold this architecture within our own soul, because we hold all these archetypes. So if we play with tarot, or not play, but work with it, or play, and we look at the astrology and we use it as a tool to remember who we are, not so much for manipulation or for, dark reasons, but we understand that these are pieces of ourselves that we're calling back from a very fragmented history because of exploding planets and all these different things that have impacted us. We're really finding the hindrance, or the negative agendas are really targeting ego, because that's the only place they can attach, like we were talking about. And the more benevolent ones are parts of ourselves, parts of our full DNA capacity, that are trying to reach us as we're trying to reach them, so that we can begin to switch everything on. And that negative ego then purifies the nucleic acids of our DNA, begin to purify, because the ether is available, which is connected to the mother, which is connected to the mitochondrial DNA. So I would say the most benevolent is very much our Mother Earth, and the fact that that energy is grounded back in the planet, and that gives us, connection to the galactic cores of Andromeda and Milky Way connecting, that brings in something that we have not been able to access for a while, that she definitely is channeling and has contact with. So there's major activations that are coming through particular people that can help us. Because
are we getting increasing off-world help now? Are we getting an increasing amount of it?
Off-world help, yes, but we have to look at it like, because we're waking up, our immune system is increasing, which means that the parasites and the viruses and the bacteria and all these things that have attached to us and made us sick as a humanity are now healing, because we're intensifying something that is organic, something that is God-given, or goddess-given as well, of course.
Yes.
That wipes all this out. And the benevolent ones are helping us, but we have to step up to the plate. They're not going to do it for us. So if we take good care of our bodies, we increase our immune system. The immune system's not going to do it for us if we trash ourselves. So to overcome the dark agendas, we have to overcome the negative ego. To embrace the more benevolent beings, we have to step up our vibration and be greeting it within ourselves to greet it from outside of us. That's how I see it.
And you touched on another question I was going to ask. It's so profound. We can sometimes, when we're getting a lot of help from Offworld, we can start looking to Offworld help, whether we're looking to the Nine or we're looking to the Pleiadians, and we can start developing sort of a savior complex, come help us, come save us. But you hit it right on the head, Laura, where you said it's important for us to step up because they're not going to do it all for us. We have to do our part, and there's so many parts of that, the physical optimization, the spiritual optimization, mental optimization. And do you think that we're facing, just to follow up on that, are we facing more negative effects from Offworld than we have in the past?
I think it's always been there, and I think we've gone through the worst. We've been in 26,000 years.
Will you say that again, please?
I think we've already gone through the worst. It's been thousands and thousands of years of hell cycles, and we have a larger history, a much bigger history than we've ever been shown or taught. This is very old. We've been in this holding tank for a long time, trying to wake up. Now the lights are switching on. So anybody who's channeling like Magenta is on a real authentic level is already holding hands with those aspects of self that are ready to come into this physical density. But the density is so dense, and the Saturn moon matrix and everything has kept it in such a low frequency of the personality and just these superficialities that we've called it a 3D Earth when it's actually a 13-dimensional, multidimensional consciousness that we are a replica of if we can just lift that veil of where these programmings connect. So that's where the negative ones tap into us. Now we're in alignment with the galactic core. We're able to receive the light codes, get the activations, connect through our feet chakras to the earth, and let the circulation of energy do its magic. We think we have to figure it out, but it's very much embodying it and releasing what doesn't serve us.
Very, very well stated. Very profound. And something else that I've seen, and this is, don't even have this written down, but it just came to my mind. And if it's too sensitive, we can bypass it. But I've been becoming recently more aware of the fact that, one of the most basic human drives and one of the most basic human needs, relating to our sexuality has been so hijacked by 2,000 years, 4,000 years, 5,000 years of Abrahamic religion. And it seems to be there's a new awakening where people are beginning to understand that it's not inherently dirty. It's not inherently bad. It's not inherently evil. And in fact, it is perhaps the closest activity that we can participate in that reminds us of our creative energies with the gods and goddesses within us. And I'm reminded of, I've been doing some studying back pre-Christian days in the Greco-Roman world. There were actual places where priests and priestesses would be, and men and women, torn by war, literally broken by war, by the trials of life, would go in and, participate in sacred activities, which would literally allow the priestess to take in the hurt and the pain, to transmute it, to repair DNA, and send it back to the person, the supplicant, and have them feel even better. And I mean, aren't we at a place now where we could, if we choose to do this and are mature enough to do this, we can work together to not only repair our DNA, but to improve it and bring in the crystalline structures that both you ladies talk about so much? Is that an untapped aspect, or am I just way off? Magenta Pixie.
I think it's been an untapped aspect on a collective level. There have been individuals and individual groups that have known about the secret to sexuality. It's now becoming much more widely known, that with that new awareness that we have. When we tap into that inner self, we just have these knowings. We don't necessarily need to hear this anywhere or read this anywhere. We just have these knowings within. And this is something, again, as you say, that's been hijacked. One of the biggest things to hijack is the ability to raise the Kundalini and move into these sort of tantric experiences, which are going to activate the DNA and do all of these wonderful things we've been talking about. Have I lost you both?
No, not at all.
Sorry, I thought you'd gone there. So it's been hijacked because, you know, to make it seem like it's wrong, it's dirty, you do it behind closed doors, you don't talk about it. And then it kind of went the other way. And then, you know, we're looking at a complete burnout with this, because you can't raise the Kundalini if you are off having sex with loads of different partners for years and years, and you just become, you know, the opposite. It must be done in a focused way with a loving partner who is matching your frequency. And then you create, you know, tantra, sex magic, whatever you want to call it. And I do think that the awareness of that is getting out there. And I think the starseeds are intrinsically aware. They have this knowing. It's all to do with the whole twin flame thing.
It is
that inner connection of the male female, and they want to then make that connection in their outer reality. They just know that this is how it should be. And this is something that's been taken from us, and it is coming back. As Laura said, the worst is over.
I love that.
Seem like that though, because what it seems like from a third dimensional point of view is everything's been fine for all of these years. There's never been a problem, and all of a sudden everything's gone crazy, and this is the worst time in history. That's the third dimensional picture. But when you do the awakening, and when you look at the real truth, this has been going on since the beginning of our known history. We have been hijacked the whole way, and now we are becoming free. And the reason why it's looking so awful is those that have been hijacking us don't want us to become free. So they're in what the Nine call the last stand energy, and they're doing everything they can to put the lid back on the box, if you like.
Right, but the genie's out of the bottle. Laura, any comments or perspectives on what we were talking about in regards to intimacy?
Oh gosh, this is just so wonderful just to be talking about this. Oh yeah, I mean, if we look at just the electromagnetic, masculine, feminine.
Oh,
right,
yes.
The circulation of our bodies has to hold that balance, or else we have energy blocks. And look at just in general how this third so-called density, which is just the programming, not the actual truth of what this planet's made of, is basically there's so many injustices, and there's so much illness, and there's so much disease. There's epidemics, there's bio warfare, there's just, and it's where physicality holds dominion over spirit. And that's the whole idea of the inverted pentagram. It's the whole idea of the ether going into the ground, not being accessible, the dodecahedron being manipulated, which represents the ether as far as the platonic solid, everything to keep us from the ether, which purifies, which advances us, which helps us to return to who we are. And so the targeting has been Kundalini, has been sexual energy, has been social engineering to remove love and sex, to change the whole notion of intimacy, and to create these gender stereotypes, and then to confuse it with gender blending to the point where it makes sense for some, of course, and it's who they are, but there's agendas to trip us up now when it comes to how we're going to merge these energies. So it's sort of like certain movements are created to get us off track, but it sounds real good when we look at it through the human perspective, like we're making real progress, but those movements are targeted too. So for us to be able to switch on our dormant DNA, we have to understand that the synthesizing of our strands are electromagnetic. They have 12 codons, both masculine and feminine, and they're connected to the elements, and they represent different stages of alchemical union, going all the way into the highest level, which was held in the Lyra system of the avatar consciousness, or the Christos light energy. And so the 9 and what is connecting in with is actually helping to move us out of the 7 chakras and into the galactic, which actually starts to create a spiral and an infinity spiral around our bodies that helps us to shift from carbon-based to crystalline. And it's based on the true love story of creation, which is the reharmonizing and rebalancing that not only affects the earth grids, but it advances us. And so when we look at the complexities of DNA, just to simplify it, it's a true love story. We have to divorce the imposters. We have to divorce ourselves from the programs, from the distortions, from the contamination, and take it upon ourselves to push the envelope and get out of that program where the women are carrying the seductress archetype just to get the attention, where the man just only looks at women in an objectified way. And it's not, all men do this, all women do this. It's both. It's a program. It's not about blaming the men. Patriarchy is a program that's impacted both. It's about stepping away and embracing the true love story. And we see that in fairy tales. We see those archetypal stories, but it's really the story of us remembering who we really are. And it's a beautiful love story.
It is so beautiful. And you said a couple things that shocked me, because it's like you've been, reading my mail. As I've been learning to move and work with and send and direct energy, it's so fascinating, because I've actually got to a place where I can literally physically see the energy, and it looks like silvery spirals of DNA. That's when I can actually literally see the energy that I'm moving and sending to people. And then you're sitting there talking about its spirals and its DNA, and it's just so amazing, because I listen to Magenta Pixie, and she says stuff in language that I would never use, but she's saying the same thing that you're saying, and you're saying the same thing that I'm saying, and we the people's perspective is, oh, these three people are so different, but yet when you boil it down, we have the same message. And one of the best manifestations of that is you saying the worst has already come. Magenta agreeing with that. And me, I take a lot of flack. I really do take a lot of flack, a lot of criticism within, the hardcore truther genre for being too optimistic, for being too Pollyannish. I've been called this, but I just know intuitively, instinctively, that the worst is behind us. I just know that we do have a grand and a glorious future. And it's like I've read the last page in the book, ladies, and I know we win. How come everybody can't see that?
Well, you're addressing me.
I'm addressing whoever. I always like to be, I don't ever like to be the smartest person in the room, because you can't learn that way. And here I am right at home, because I am learning at the feet of two lovely, powerful beings, two masters of information and energy. And it is my honor and privilege to be here with you two ladies. Please go on.
Thank you. Yeah, people who don't see this are predominantly looking with that linear perspective within what the nine call the third dimension. And yes, Laura's quite right. It isn't a 3D dimension. It's just how we look at this world. So to look at it from that perspective, you can't see that there's this positive future or the positive place we're in now. Because when we look with the 3D eye, it does look chaotic. It looks like everything is going wrong. Everything is falling about our feet. And we see one program that Laura was talking about, and we'll think, well, that's the bad program. We'll take the opposite view, which is the good one. And they don't realize that all of the third dimension is hacked. All of the programs, male, female, the sort of gender neutral, they're all hacked in the same way. There's no this is bad and this is good and this is the product of a cabal agenda and this isn't. The only way is to take the higher view, and it means taking a spiritual path in life, and it means being spiritually disciplined to that path, however that may mean to you. It doesn't matter whether it's martial arts, yoga, nutrition, channeling, meditation, walking on the beach, music. It doesn't matter. It's all about you, as Laura was saying earlier, having integrity within to the path that one is on. When you go there, when you view your perspective, you view reality from that perspective. You see outside of you that which you are within. And when you take that, and when you take that place within that is with that integrity and that alignment, you will have that reflected back at you. So if you are in a place in your own individual life where the worst of your life is over, the best is yet to come, and you are in a good place, you will reflect that reality back to you. And what's happening at the moment is this is a collective movement. Every starseed is doing this, and because they are doing this collectively, that is what is creating this reality to reflect back at us, and we are experiencing it because we are intrinsically connected with our reality, with all these multidimensional realities, with the galactic grid systems. They are our DNA structures. We are we are these things. We are stargates. We are part of the cosmos. So when we go through this ourselves and we take these perspectives, we create the reality, you know, going back to the law of magnetic attraction, we create our reality individually, but we also create our reality globally. But it doesn't just mean what we experience. It actually means the physical reality as well. The planets, the planetary systems, the dimensions, the timelines, the stars, the whole solar system, we're all completely unified. So we can't see that positivity and how far we've come unless we take the overview. Having said all that, some people will go too far the other way, and then they will get to the point where they only see beauty, and they will say things like, everything's perfect, everything is absolutely as it should be, it's perfect and it's wonderful and let's rejoice. And then they are not looking at the third dimensional reality where everything isn't perfect and people are being abused and people are dying and people are suffering. As Laura said, there are diseases and illnesses, etc., etc. It's about integration, and we integrate all of those different perspectives. And when we do that, we integrate our own cellular structure, and then we integrate the reality that is mirrored back at us. And we are doing this collectively. Even if we think we're alone, even if we don't feel that we've got anyone that we can connect to, and the only way we can make a connection with like-minded individuals is to watch shows like this, we are doing it collectively, because you don't have to actually be in the presence of individuals to be part of this collective movement. This is energetic. So,
Laura, what's your perspective on this whole talk that we're having here?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. I just get goosebumps.
Me too.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those kind of interviews when you just goosebumped. Yeah. So, I mean, our creative channels pick up things, people's projections, people's expectations, societal programs, and viruses that they want to put out on a, mental level. So the tree of knowledge has been targeted with mind control. So when we seek knowledge, very often it's outside of ourself. And that's where all the distortions are. We're not even getting our true history. We're not even getting the full picture. Not to say that there isn't a lot that is accurate, but it's always give enough truth and then twist it to serve, some kind of agenda. Because if we get hooked in and we bought the bait, then once we've taken the bait, that's when we're sort of in trouble. And things like geoengineering and chemtrails and all these assaults are going to impact us that much more, because we're not in a dimensional level of consciousness that can transmute and alchemize and neutralize this weaponry. So when our creative channels through the mind is infected with a propaganda meme or something about the future scenario, or a false flag happens, we're very much enabling the very things we don't want to see. And when we remove ourselves from that and really understand that the way to do that is to be so authentic to yourself that you're vibrating at such a truth frequency, no lies and betrayal can come in anymore, then you're going to be able to see through it all. And your discernment and BS meter is going to be working. But people sometimes are afraid of that authenticity, because it might mean that they let down their guard. They admit they're in pain. They admit that they're struggling, and they admit that they're depressed or angry. And I say that's really healthy, actually, to be feeling those things. That's all a part of it. The more we shove it down, the more we shame it, the worse it gets. And so if we can allow ourselves to move through these processes and be real with ourselves about it, we're halfway there, because this is also an addiction matrix. We lost connection with our mother. We've been robbed of certain things, including sacred union. And we all carry a broken heart. Everybody deals with it their own way. Some with addiction to substances, some to addiction with something outside of themselves, or putting somebody as their leader and their guru, or somebody to tell them what to do and how to do it. Some are safer than others, and are really looking out for a person's best interest. And we do need each other, and to walk with each other and rehabilitate together, of course, too. But there's a lot of sneaky people. So the more we're true to ourselves, the more that frequency is going to protect us. But we can't be afraid to drop the facades, because that's exactly what it's attempting to do. And that's where they get us to battle. And so I can't really remember the original question, though. No,
that was exactly right. And let me ask you this, Laura and Magenta. I'm not sure how much you're facing this in your particular arm of this galaxy that we're together in. But Laura, within your genre, certainly within my genre, we're starting to face a little more censorship, a little more control from places like YouTube and the platforms that we broadcast a lot of our information from. And, some people are reacting, some are overreacting, in my opinion, to what's happening. And this is a great point. Like Magenta saying you can't ignore what's going on, but what's the right perspective, do you think, when we are being faced with, you can say this, you can't say that, here's some new guidelines, and some people are saying, let's just get off of here. But I'm, again, not surprisingly, on the optimistic path. But Laura, please speak to that, and Magenta, if it's in your genre as well, please let us know. What would be your advice, and what do you think is the proper mindset, ladies, when we are facing at least some increased level of repression and oppression and suppression?
Well, I think it's a state of mind. I think we can maybe notice these restrictions around us, but can it really take our consciousness? Can it really steal our soul? Can it really prevent us from connecting with spirit? There might be certain limitations, but we have that in the physical body as well. There's only certain things we can do. We can't just flap our wings and fly, but we can fly in our dreams. So we have this creative imagination. We have access to something way beyond. And no matter how much they try and limit it, block it, there's places that they can't touch. And so if we stay connected to those places, we also are a part of manifesting shift and change and the dropping of those sort of assaults. It's when we buy into the program, when we buy into the bait, when we buy into the struggle. Sometimes I feel like we make the walls thicker around us. There's always some way around it. If we're water and we're fluid, we can find a way to flow around the obstacles. And if we look at it like an athlete looks at an obstacle course, it's all excited about the challenge. It can handle the challenge, and there's no obstacle that's too big because it has that athletic warrior mindset. And so we got to look at life like that. If we look at it like, we're a victim to it, we're never going to overcome it, and it's only going to get worse.
Laura, I thought I was a fan of yours before this interview, and now I'm just total, complete fanboy. You're amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Magenta. Absolutely. Magenta, are you seeing a more increase in censorship, and how would you suggest that those that at least feel they are react to it?
I'd just like to say she is amazing, isn't she?
Isn't she just unbelievable?
Yeah. That's how I feel about you guys. I had the goosebumps this whole time. I'm just so thrilled.
It's funny, folks. All three of us, we've been on hundreds, maybe thousands of interviews, and I made the remark before we started that this is the first time in a long time that I've been nervous before an interview, and they're like, "Oh, me too, me too." So we knew that there was some special energy here, and it's a privilege for all of you to share this with us. I'm sorry, Magenta, I interrupted you.
It's the energy, and that's why we're nervous, because it's not really nerves. It's like you're going into something. Normally, when I do,
we're giddy.
It's one-on-one, so it's two. It's you, me, and I feel kind of, but I can handle that energy. But with the three, and with Laura having such a high vibrational matrix around her, it's raising the frequency so high. And I'm sure that everyone listening, maybe not everyone, but the majority of people listening will feel that. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I think, when was it? In the Infinite Helix, the Emerald Flame, the very first beginning of this was to actually...
Oh, that's right. I remember. Yeah.
It was a transmission that I brought forward February 24th, 2018.
I love this.
Dark Deeds, Pole Shift, Indigo Revolution, and the Law of One. And it was all about, are the star seeds and the truth is being silenced. And what can we do about this?
And I love what the 9 said about it. Please tell us.
Yeah, I mean, then that kind of went into the book and also a video. So basically, it's everything Laura said. They use the term, there will always be a back door. Mm-hmm. We are powerful. We can come together. Now, if we wanted to, let's say that YouTube, and I know that this is an agenda, but let's say YouTube has an agenda to get all the content creators off and anyone in the alternative movement off YouTube and have it all completely controlled. And everyone's panicking, saying, oh, they're doing this to us and they're doing that to us, which is all valid points. But we are powerful. We can come together and say, right, we're the content creators. We are the ones that have made YouTube. Let them carry on with their controlled programs, and let us come together and present what we know some other way. And that is the back door. So there will be other sites that will spring up. Am I going through this personally? It's very interesting you asked that. I've had the odd video completely demonetized, and I've had copyright claims on those as well. Anything to do with, false flag or anything more in the truther sort of conspiracy arena will be flagged. I have never challenged it. I just let it go. But most of my videos obviously are channeled. When I speak to the Nine, it's interesting what they say. And this is something that perhaps many starseeds who are drawn to the more light worker, new age presentation of this reality, what they've said is, and I've got to be careful I don't give too much away, but basically the fluffy bunny space cadet off the planet arena in the new age, whilst it is, you know, crazy and ungrounded, is somewhat of a protection, because they're not as concerned about those who make themselves look like clowns on their own, if you know what I mean. If we
Yes.
are, if we're talking about, you know, all you've got to do is close your eyes, think of a unicorn, and you will fly off to another planet and be saved or something. That whole vibe is not a threat in itself. The collective movement of activating the DNA and you know, connecting with the galactic core, bringing down the light codes and changing the structure of this reality is what they don't want. But to actually target someone who is putting out what they might see as fluffy material isn't the priority. I'm not saying it won't be targeted eventually. So the new agey stuff is kind of left alone to a point. It's more the conspiracy, the truther, that sort of area is being very controlled. But we are all in one place. There isn't really, as I've said before, we're the light worker, truther
Absolutely.
we're all the same, and there's a back door for all of us, and there always will be. And as Laura said, it is a state of mind. You move into that knowing. And
Absolutely.
often I think what happens if somebody, you know, hijacked my YouTube channel and deleted all my videos, and, you know, would I fall in a heap on the floor and cry my eyes out and be devastated? Yeah, probably. I'm not lying. I would. I'd be really
Me too.
upset. But at the end of the day, I know that information that I'm here to bring, that's my destiny. That isn't going to stop. It will continue. And I will do whatever I can to continue to get that message out. Whatever platform I can find, whatever means I can find that is safe and that can reach people. But there are those targeting the independent content creators for other reasons as well, and that's not necessarily fully cabal, as in let's shut up the starseeds. There are those that come in from corporations that are looking at money.
Sure.
And they don't want independent creators creating money on their own. They want to, you know, they don't want anyone to be independent because that's lucrative. I mean, I saw this family on YouTube a couple of years ago. They started off pretty small, talking about, you know, nutrition, but they got so many followers, literally in the millions, that now they've been recruited by a talent scout, and they're now signing contracts, and they can't do their independent stuff anymore. They might not necessarily be aware. They probably think, yay, we've been spotted by a talent scout. This is amazing. So I would just say to any independent content creator, whether you're making videos, writing books, music, whatever you're doing, be aware of retaining your independence in any contract you make or sign, because those that are wanting to hijack you, either because you are a starseed and they want to just control you, or because they want money, or both, those people will come in and try to do that in many, many ways. And the way to have an antidote to that, if you like, is to make sure that the contract you're signing or the agreement you're going into gives you your independence, even if it means you can't reach as many people, even if it means you're not going to make as much money. That doesn't matter. That's all linear stuff. This is about the mission, and this is about the collective movement. So retain your independence. But when you're in that higher energy, that higher flow, you can't lose your independence anyway when you're in that flow, because it's a unification. It's an infinite structure. You can't lose your independence there, because it is about complete individualization within that unified field. So when
Absolutely.
you're there, You are always in what I call the core, but one may call this the solar plexus, the heart, integrity, alignment. And when you have empathy, when you have intuition, you can feel it. It's like you can feel when you're in that core structure, and your life will mirror what you are, and you can see it all happen around you. It's very magical. And then you know that you are on track. And that doesn't mean you're there 24/7, and it doesn't mean you failed if you stop feeling like that for a while. All of that's normal, because we're all in a linear reality as well.
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly, the 9 said in that book, in that transmission, that the attempts at suppressing and the attempts at censorship will fail, and we will be victorious.
Yes, absolutely, because there's always a back door.
Absolutely.
And those in that aligned flow, in that core integrity, will find the back door. And if you want to bring it down into the third dimensional reality, well, what is that? Well, let's say YouTube. If YouTube no longer serves us as a platform, then there are already others springing up. There will be others. And I guess the hope would be that there isn't another core template as strong as YouTube, so that everyone will scatter. That still doesn't matter, but they won't. They will gather together. But even if all the content creators, all the starseeds scatter into different places, this doesn't matter, because it's not about space. It's not about having this platform where everyone is. We can find that information. One only has to go within and think, okay, this is a question I would like a response to. Please bring me into the connection where I can find the answer to this question. And you'll find it wherever it is, whether it's a book or a website or a show or a radio show, whatever. So
we will.
You know, that information will go out there. It will go where it's meant to, because whilst there is this hijacked dark template and this negativity, there is equally and always, because the starseeds are controlling the timelines for Earth, always a little bit more positivity. So that positive flow is always working simultaneously, which is why this service to self structure, whatever you want to call them, that's why they are, if you like, in the process of defeat. And from the viewpoint we want to take, they are defeated.
Absolutely.
That's the truth we need to live, because that is the truth.
Great advice from you ladies. And Laura and Magenta, before we came on, you both said that you follow each other's work. You do enjoy each other's work. Laura, having been a follower of Magenta's work, as we get ready to close the show, I thought it might be fun if, since you've been watching Magenta's work and following her, is there a question that you would like to ask Magenta about her work, or about some question that you have about her work?
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow. I could go. I'm more like, when do I get to meet you in person? Okay. Oh, man.
And I found out today Laura's from the UK, and hopefully that a meeting between you two ladies can be facilitated at some point.
Sure. I'm really interested in your latest book. When I first became a speaker, I heard of your name. I'm not really able to keep up with anyone as much as I would like, but I've always had just this heart frequency connection with you, and I've just always just made sure I just had my ear over there and just feeling the energy, actually transmission and connection. But I'm really interested in the book you're coming out with, because you talk about 5G. You talk about a lot of stuff that people are freaking out about, the things that make it look like the world is not where we want it to be. And I would just love to hear just a little bit about it. I know it's just coming out, so I definitely want to, get it myself. So are these a lot of the messages you're getting through Council of Nine? Is it based on some of that, or tell me a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so the one that's just come out, the Black Box Program and the Rose Gold Flame as Antidote, right, that I expected to just be another video for YouTube. So I'm asking about 5G because I was inundated with repeated emails and messages about people panicking about 5G. And when I get that much questions from so many people, I will turn to the Nine and say, look, this is really affecting lots of people. So they brought through the information, which I thought was for a video, but it was too long to put into a video. To be honest, the transmission was too short for a book. So it ended up being this little thin pamphlet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So really, this is about, they started to speak about the black box program, which is very much what you would perhaps call the dark program, the infiltration, the inverted matrix, that sort of thing. But it was specific to using chemicals and also using a scrambling system, an energetic scrambling system to hijack the population. Funnily enough, they said chemtrails, the vaccine program in there as well. So vaccines, chemtrails, and 5G. The vaccine program, originally, the core, the very start point was for a positive reason. Originally, it genuinely was to try to help people heal from disease. And that was hijacked. But the chemtrails and the 5G was never a good positive core point. It was always a hijacking from the start.
Fascinating.
So it got more sort of power to it. And so the theory of creating this sort of 5G technology and other similar technologies was that the organic structure around humans, this signal that they give out naturally and how they connect to the earth and the cosmos, if one could scramble that system and make them connect to an artificial intelligence system, then this would then hijack them to the point where they can't go through ascension and they can't reconnect the strands. They can't reconnect the original core templates within the DNA and get back to the crystalline presentation. And so that was the original core agenda. What the human individuals do is they connect naturally to the earth and the cosmos, and they connect to this frequency within the earth that the Nine call the crystal river, which we know is the Schumann resonance. So the book really is about alchemical unification, which is finding a way to connect all the star seeds with the Schumann resonance, which they're doing anyway. If the vibrational state of the star seeds and the Schumann resonance on all of the planets, you know, depending on the different, there's obviously, you know more about that than me. There's so many different frequencies coming from all the different planets, but let's just work with Earth. If the Schumann resonance moves into a higher frequency than the scrambling system, then the scrambling system can't work. So basically, this is one of the reasons why the Schumann resonance has been raising. But also the Nine were looking at timelines and probabilities, because obviously we are looking at the starseed consciousness. The starseed consciousness is about liberty templates, as in freedom, and 5G and chemtrails is the opposite of freedom. So what they were saying is the most probable timeline is that there's two different 5G signals. One is the original created core template that is there to scramble the system, which is a very, very harmful frequency. The most probable timeline was that original 5G would not manifest on a large enough scale to do this damage that I've been talking about, or do damage to the ecosystem. What is more probable is that either 5G doesn't manifest at all, or if it does come in, it's in very small places, and there is blockages against 5G coming in, as in protesting and governments and whatever is going on there. Or that 5G will come in with a watered down signal, which really won't be that much stronger than 4G that we have now. It may be slightly different, but it isn't enough to scramble the system of the starseeds because it will be lower than the Crystal River, which is the Schumann resonance.
Fantastic.
It's the importance of working with sigils, working with the triquetra, because it is the Trinity, moving into alchemical unification yourself, and how you can create an antidote, because even the watered down signal 5G may still affect some sensitive individuals. I myself am very sensitive to EMFs, so I have to work this way myself anyway with normal 4G, let alone 5G. So it's basically showing the reader of this information the most probable timeline for us, and how we can create that, how we connect to the Schumann resonance, and how we create this unification within ourselves, which becomes an antidote, which can help us from any kind of hijacking. So
beautiful.
that's that book. But that's a standalone book. The other three kind of carry on. And then the next one, the one that I'm bringing forward now, is going sort of further into this, beyond 5G and into more, talking more about the entire hijacking of the galactic grid structure and the solar system, and how we can, how we are the antidote to all of these things. The starseeds collectively, and our raising of our consciousness and the reconstruction of our crystalline DNA, we are the antidote to all these things.
Totally. Oh my God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. MagentaPixie.com is where you can find Magenta Pixie's information. And Magenta, being a follower of Laura's work, do you have a question you'd like to ask her?
You know, I hadn't necessarily followed Laura's work. I just kept hearing her name over and over again. Laura Eisenhower, Laura Eisenhower. And I heard it so often that I thought, I'm going to see who this person is, because I kept hearing her name. And then I did actually look at some of her work and the amazing things she's doing. It's funny, I don't necessarily feel to ask a question per se, although this might be a question. Actually, it is a question. And I want to know if perhaps you resonate with this information, because when I first started to look at you, I did get some information through that would be something that would concern everybody, but specifically to you and your situation. And that is that when it comes to ancestral karma or ancestral connection or ancestral memory, an individual that has had a certain lifetime where something very specific has happened, something very important has happened, and that individual hasn't been able to continue their work because their lifetime has ended, they can do one of two things. They can reincarnate again and carry on with their work and raise their memories, or that what is much easier and is very much a similar thing, they and can be the same thing, to be honest, they pass that code down through the genetic line. But it's very rare that the whole group of descendants will have that activated code. That can happen in like indigenous peoples, but in Western society, not so much. So it can be passed down through the family, and then there can be one individual that has that code. And what I felt when I first saw you is that that activated code in your great-grandfather is in you, and it's been there since childhood, and it's activated. So there's some kind of work you're doing that is carrying on in a very sort of esoteric way, and that's why you're out there now. That's why you're doing what you're doing in a completely different way than your great-grandfather, but you're carrying this information code, this DNA code specific to his memories and his mission, and you're kind of intertwined even though you're independent. The reason why I bring this up is A, do you resonate with that? And B, everybody has that. You don't have to have a famous ancestor, but everyone will have a code somewhere from, if they're a starseed, because when you're a starseed, you activate that ancestral yourself. So you're here to finish what your ancestor started and resolve karmas, or however that may manifest for the individual. Is that something that you've picked up yourself? And
oh yeah, I've done a lot of energy work around all this, because this was really coming to me as a kid. I was almost overwhelmed by it, because it's not like I was seeing a lot of different beings, but he was always there and just kind of with me. One time I walked into a group of clairvoyant sort of meditators, and without knowing my name, they said, "Oh, Eisenhower's here," that he's actually walking with me and he's around me. And a lot of different things have come through people and different channels also about, our relationship. And somebody even said, which resonates, I was sort of his spirit guide. Now he's mine. And we've just sort of been taking turns with the same mission, because what I've noticed about him and I is we both have a similar mission as far as when we're in human form and beyond. We're looking for the same sort of thing: unity, consciousness, overcoming these dark agendas. And of course, the massive targeting that he went through is very much in that context of massive war, military, presidential position. And so I felt him just trying to prepare me and just sort of like, oh no, like gotta stick near her, because I don't know, this is going to be pretty heavy once it starts to really unfold, connected to ET government treaties and all these different visitations and things that happened during the Second World War and paperclip and all this stuff. And I was getting download to the point where I was really living a double life my whole life. And I just gave up on trying to explain it to anybody. I just hit the road, lived really close to nature, and just have been processing and just had this cyclone like around my head my whole life. And then, through writing and through other creative ways, just gotten a grip on it, connected dots, been able to research and answer some of these questions. But I've definitely felt that. And I know that a lot of people have that as well. And I feel incredibly close to him because of it. But I do feel outside of my own personal mission as a soul, as a sovereign soul, we have a special, agreement for sure. And so and he hangs very close by, and he hasn't, just let go of the emotions that he feels about the things that have happened, the things he couldn't do. And he actually, somebody told me that he was briefed when he was president that there would be a descendant that was born that could continue what he couldn't. And that gave him a lot of like peace. But I take some of it with a grain of salt. I'm like, okay, that doesn't feel off, but I can't say exact, but I totally resonate. So thank you so much for sharing that. Cause, I got a picture of him right there and he's looking over and I'm just like, And
wow.
What I love about what we both have in common is it's about all of us. This whole government structure, this whole system, neither one of us are in agreement to. And it's really about the people. It's really about empowering what we're all made of and walking hand in hand. Like, I love the fact that you say, I feel like we speak such a similar language. I'm like so blown away. And Jeffrey, thank you so much.
It's my privilege. And Laura's website is cosmicgaia.org.
Yeah. And join my podcast. I work with people with astrology. I have a call-in show and we can work with your chart to help figure out, how to best serve this window, this ascension window, to understand the patternings that might get in the way and the things that can help activate and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Ladies, it has been an absolute privilege and honor to have you. I hope that perhaps we can do it again someday. Magenta Pixie, Laura Eisenhower, thank you so much for being here. And of course, thank our great, very large audience for being here as well. And I can't say enough. It's been a tremendous little bit longer than an hour. And after talking to you ladies, I feel even more optimistic, even more Pollyanna. And I know that it's not going to be easy, but I do believe that together we are going to win. Definitely. Thank you so much for being with us. And if you'd sit there just for a moment so I could say goodbye to you personally, and to the rest of you in the chat room, even though the three of us were here, you're the most important people in this program, and we hope that you'll continue to watch our content. Go to magentapixie.com. Go to cosmicgaia.org. Magenta has a great YouTube channel. It is listed in the box below. The same with Laura's. We do appreciate all of you for being here. And until next time, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, reminding you that we are the last generation of real humans. And if we get busy, we know that history is written by winners. We can win today, and together we can write a better tomorrow. We'll see you again real soon.